I still feel the chill down my spine from that moment. I, a simple truck driver, saw a young woman handcuffed inside a pickup truck, surrounded by criminals ready to do something terrible. And in that instant, I knew I couldn't just keep driving. What I did next changed everything. But before I tell you, comment what you thought of this story. Give it a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to get to know you better and see if you stayed until the end. I knew every pebble on Route 219. 12 years crossing that highway in the dead of night, with the window cracked open and the radio barely whispering. It wasn't a quirk, it was survival. After my sister vanished on a road just like this one, I learned that you have to listen to the world more carefully, as if the silence could warn you before tragedy strikes. It was Sunday, 12:20 in the morning. My rig's headlights cut through the fog and lit up the scene. A pickup parked on the shoulder, lights off. 4 men standing around it, moving with that calm you only see in people who know there are no witnesses. And inside, barely visible through the fogged-up glass, a woman. Hands bound in front of her, head down, shoulders hunched. I recognized that posture before I recognized anything else. It was the posture of someone who had lost all control over their fate. I kept driving. 2 miles. 3. The silence inside the cab started getting heavy. The mountain pass was way too cold. The engine roared like always, but something in the air felt wrong. I did what you never do on a pitch-black mountain road with no shoulder. I pulled a U-turn. When I got back, the men were gone. Only she was left, still inside the truck, her wrist bruised by the plastic zip ties they had used on her. I pulled her out of there with the same quiet efficiency I used to patch up a busted axle, fast, leaving no trace, without flashing my flashlight more than absolutely necessary. She didn't fight back. She didn't scream. She looked at me with a chilling calmness that didn't feel like giving up. It felt like she was assessing me. When she climbed into my cab, she just told me that I was going to regret this. Not as a threat, as a warning. I put the rig in gear and rolled down the mountain in the dark. Only later would I understand that this flawless rescue was actually just the beginning of it all. Her name was Emily. 26 years old, dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, eyes exhausted like someone who hasn't slept right in weeks. She was a federal labor investigator. Over the past 8 months, she had been documenting serious labor violations on the farms of a local big shot named Richard Black. Richard wasn't cruel just because he was powerful. He was cruel because he had been betrayed years ago by a partner who blew the whistle on him to the feds. Ever since, he lived convinced that anyone sniffing around his business was plotting against him. That paranoia had warped his judgment. When he found out Emily was investigating him, he ordered his guys to grab her. Not because she had proven anything, but because she was digging. And to Richard, that was proof enough of a conspiracy. I took Emily to a truck stop 25 miles from the scene. I paid for a motel room out of my own pocket, left the folded receipt under the room key, and didn't even tell her I was doing it. When she found that piece of paper the next morning, she stood there staring at it longer than anything had held her attention in days. There was something about that quiet gesture that disarmed her. No expectation of gratitude, no demand for answers. She came looking for me before noon, and for the first time since she started her investigation, she spilled everything to someone. I listened in silence. I'm not the kind of guy who interrupts. I'm the kind who processes things slowly, calculating the weight of a load before deciding if the axle can take it. When she finished, I stayed quiet for a full solid minute. I finally told her that my sister was trying to blow the whistle on someone too, on a lonely stretch of highway, and she never made it. That wasn't a coincidence. It was the kind of echo that hurts because it rings in a part of your memory that never healed right. I didn't decide to help Emily right then because I thought we'd win. I'm way too pessimistic for that. I made the decision because my own code, forged over 12 years on the road, simply wouldn't let me abandon someone I had brought into my own cab. The next day I woke up to a text from an unknown number telling me to return what wasn't mine and get lost. I ignored it. At 10 in the morning, my boss called saying he'd received an anonymous complaint about my truck's condition, and a surprise inspection had been scheduled for that afternoon. I felt the heat, but not enough to cave. Not yet. The following days brought a mounting pressure that started subtle and became impossible to ignore. Dave, another driver from my same freight company and Richard's trusted man in the area, started showing up at the same truck stops I did. No direct confrontation, just his presence, a silent reminder that I was being watched. When I tried reaching out to a state inspector Emily had mentioned as an ally, I found out the guy had taken sudden medical leave 2 days prior, out of nowhere, with no return date. The coincidence was way too big to be an accident. Emily needed a copy of the files she had stashed on a flash drive. But the drive was at her apartment in Roanoke, and Richard already knew where she lived. I went to get it, alone, in the dead of night, relying on my knowledge of back roads I'd gathered from years on the route. I got there, grabbed the flash drive, and was walking out when I spotted Vince, one of the guys I'd seen that night by the pickup, standing on the sidewalk right outside her building. We locked eyes. Neither of us said a word. I kept walking with my heart pounding but my hands steady, because that's how I operated. Terrified on the inside, rock solid on the outside. But when I got back to my rig and turned the key, the battery was dead. 3 hours waiting on a dark street for a tow, with the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket, and the growing certainty that the walls were closing in on me, like a rocky trail getting narrower until there's only a steep cliff on one side and a sheer drop on the other. Nate, a roadside mechanic I'd known for years, pulled up with his wrecker at 2 a.m. While he swapped the battery, he looked at me with the dead seriousness of a man about to say something he really wished he didn't have to, warning me that Richard said if I didn't skip town by tomorrow night, he was going to use what he had on my family. I froze. I had a cousin up in Richmond. We weren't tight, but she was family, and Richard had found the exact right pressure point. That was the night I almost threw in the towel. No drama, no crying, no yelling, just my way. Sitting in a freezing cab, staring at the empty blacktop, running the mental math on whether the sacrifice made any sense. Wondering if Emily could survive on her own, if there was any real chance this wouldn't end in disaster for anyone not named Richard. It was Emily who knocked on my window at 3:30 in the morning. She had woken up with a gut feeling that something was wrong and walked 6 blocks to my truck in the pitch black, the gravel tearing up the thin soles of her sneakers. She didn't speak right away. She just popped the door open, sat in the passenger seat, and stayed quiet beside me. That calmness she possessed, which wasn't naivety but an active choice to not let fear poison every silence, did something no argument ever could. It gave me back my clarity, proving I wasn't in the wrong place. I was exactly where I needed to be. On the morning of the 10th day, Emily found a detail in her files that had slipped through the cracks. Buried in the paperwork for Richard's ranches were records linking Dave directly to shady deals that incriminated him entirely apart from his boss. That flipped the board. Dave wasn't just a loyal company man. He was an accomplice with a vested interest in keeping his mouth shut. But he was also someone who could become the weakest link if he realized he was about to go down alone. I knew how to talk to guys like Dave. I knew because I used to be in some ways just like him, a guy who chose to look the other way for years just to keep things easy, and only woke up when the price got too damn high. There were no threats when we met, just mutual recognition. And Dave, for the first time in years, made a call that wasn't dictated by his boss. He took me to the exact spot where Richard kept the hard copies that backed up everything Emily had documented on her drive. The county sheriff's office wasn't expecting us. I had spent 2 days feeling out a connection with Ray, a detective who went to the academy with an old trucker buddy of mine, and who had a solid reputation as the kind of cop who wouldn't sweep things under the rug for a free steak dinner. When I walked in with Emily, with Dave, and with the physical and digital evidence she had meticulously organized over weeks of digging, Ray stared at the pile on his desk for a long time before speaking. He said it was going to take a while to process all of it. I told him I knew, but that he was going to process it anyway. And that was enough. Richard was hauled into the precinct for questioning on the afternoon of the 14th day, while a cold drizzle fell over the Rocky Mountain Pass, turning the dust into mud. Cole and Ray, 2 detectives who handled the files with the heavy caution of men who know they can't afford a single screw-up on a case this big, ran the bust with the surgical precision Emily had dreamed of during her lonely months of undercover work. One by one, Richard's cronies stopped answering their phones. First Vince, then his suppliers, then the local politicians who had been cashing his checks. He walked into that station with an entourage. He walked out looking a hell of a lot less invincible than when he went in. And back at the sprawling stone mansion he built to prove he had beaten everything life threw at him, the silence that settled wasn't the silence of a man in control. It was the other kind. The kind where no guests come knocking, no allies pick up the phone, and no mirror reflects the untouchable image he had spent a lifetime building. I hit the road again on the morning of the 15th day. Before I pulled out, Emily walked up to the rig carrying 2 cups of gas station coffee. That bitter, scalding mud that tastes like nothing but makes all the sense in the world at 6 a.m. when the sun hasn't quite decided to show up yet. We stood there, right outside the door, the damp morning gravel still clinging to the soles of our boots, and we barely said a word. It wasn't the kind of bond that needed a lot of talking to exist. She asked if I was going to stay out on the road. I told her I always would. And for the first time in 6 years, there was something in those words that wasn't just a blind habit. It was a choice. Route 219 didn't have a fancy name, but as I threw the big rig into gear and felt the mountain gravel crunch beneath those heavy tires, I figured maybe it didn't need one. Some roads aren't just places on a map. They're decisions you make in the pitch black, having no clue where they're going to lead. And sometimes, when you least expect it, they drop you off exactly where you were supposed to be all along. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story by giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.